Recipes for Grief, heartfelt storytelling for feely foodies. I'm your host, Andrea Sexton Dumas. Today on the podcast, I interview my brother-in-law, Pedro. He shares about the foods of his childhood living with his grandparents in Guatemala, like paches, maleta, and mole, or recados. We touch on U.S. imperialism, names, and why his children, Hugo Yasche and Nayeli Gloria, are black bean babies. Pedro Navarro is an educator by trade, originally from Guatemala, now firmly rooted in Long Beach, California. He enjoys company with family and friends, yet appreciates time alone under the sun, running or tending to his plants and observing nature. Pedro, my brother in law and in heart, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the Recipes for Grief podcast.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for offering.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be sharing some words.
Me too. So the first question that we ask every guest is, how have you been sleeping recently?
Last night I slept pretty well, and it's been great to have y'all here hanging out with us, visiting Long Beach.
Yeah.
I tend to sleep pretty solid. Yes, and depending on the daily consumption, I'll have a good sleep or deeper sleep or a lot of dreams kind of sleep. So I do enjoy sleeping.
I know that's right.
Yes.
Well, before we move on to food, do you have any dreams that you would be willing to share that have been particularly poignant?
Sure. I feel like I always have dreams where I'm at a house and it's a new house and I'm always trying to find out like where I am in the house, exploring the house, even like hotels, just visiting, just going to places, finding interesting things in attics. I don't like to read too deep into my dreams.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's like, all my subconscious stuff, but it's fun. It's fun to explore these places when I have those houses dreams.
Yeah. So speaking of houses, would you start off by telling us about your grandmother Ophelia's house in Casillas, Guatemala?
Yes. So I moved a lot when I was in Guatemala. I was born there in 1980 to a father who was involved in the revolutionary movement in Guatemala and to a mother who was also involved. They were pretty heavily integrated into the communist socialist revolution movement there in Guatemala. So we moved around a lot. And after my father passed away due to the war, he was taken by the military and tortured and disappeared. My mom decided to migrate to the United States. And she tried to bring us, or the idea was for her to bring the two of us, my sister Erica and I, along with her and cross the border illegally. But her brother said no. He said, it's too dangerous. Let's just leave him with mom, with grandma. And that's how I ended up staying at my grandma's for 2 years when I was in kindergarten and first grade. And it was some of the best experiences ever. So connecting it to food, my grandparents, my mother's parents, they own land. They had land, ancestral land. We're not necessarily traditional indigenous. We're just mixed people. But they were campesinos. They were farm workers, but for themselves. They didn't work for anybody else. They had their lands, and then they had their home, pretty big home, 2 houses put together. So long story shorter is that I got to grow up in that space for those 2 years of my life. Some of my earliest memories, especially coming from the city of Guatemala, living in an apartment. We lived in a government housing that was for like semi-professional, so it wasn't like the lowest income, but it was nice. It was a nice apartment complex. Coming from there to living in a farm town kind of place, it was great. So a lot of my memories are of seeing the chickens and their little chicks, the ducks with their little ducklings, just following them around. The big turkeys, the male turkeys, fluttering their feathers and chasing after the female turkeys. My grandpa bringing home the fresh corn from harvesting, the fresh beans. I remember cutting myself with a sickle when I was out in the field with my grandpa. And he had me do some planting of corn. And I remember that day when I grabbed the sickle and little kid just didn't use it right, and I cut myself. So those memories are really fond for me.
Yeah. And
that's the setting where I usually, I don't know, I go back to, especially now that I plant trees and work with the earth a little bit. I always remember my grandparents and all those stories that I remember hearing from my grandma, and her making the fresh tortillas, grinding the corn. Just it was really good times.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the black beans. It sounds like they grew them fresh, and then they would probably dry them in the sun. Is that right?
Yeah. So the black beans is a staple of Guatemala. So we eat a lot of different types of beans, because there's also the white bean soup that my grandparents make. There's also the cold bean and sausages, fiambre that my tia Erika makes. So the black beans in Casillas, they were part of the just a general culture. But the main black beans that I grew up eating and accustomed to, they're more from my father's side, my grandma, and my father's side of the family. They were more about the traditional recipes of Guatemala and of their hometown of San Pedro, Zacatepeques. So it's a whole other side of Guatemala compared to where my mom is from. And they all met in the city, in the capital city, because that's where a lot of young people go for work and education after they grow up in the small towns. So the black bean soup that I remember fondly was the one that my grandma used to make.
And this is your paternal grandmother?
This is my grandma, Ophelia. Yeah, which is always nice that we have those connections. And
that's
I heard,
right.
Because you have a family member named Ophelia.
Yeah, my Aunt Ophelia, that's right.
And then I heard your other podcast, you mentioned that Dorothy too.
Yes, my mother's mother was grandmother Dorothy. And nice. So who's Dorothy in your family?
Is my dad's sister.
No way.
Yes.
I must have forgotten that. I feel like I had to have known it.
Yeah. And she was the anchor of the house, of the family. Yeah.
Okay. So the two different grandmothers prepared black beans in different ways.
Yes.
And so the black bean soup, tell us about that.
So that's the black bean soup with a lot of liquid. So it's black beans. And it's served really hot with a lot of liquid, and you crack an egg on it. You crack an egg in it. Oh. So the egg cooks inside of the hot black bean soup. And it's pretty nice because you have those contrast of colors.
Yeah.
You have the really dark black bean water or soup. It's almost like blue, right? It's like a blue, black, dark black bean water, and then you crack the egg, which turns white, as it's cooking. So that was always something that I remember.
Yeah, and then you have that beautiful golden, yolk.
Yeah,
that ray of sunshine in the middle of your plate.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that's one connection of the black beans. But my mom, then she learned a lot from her in-laws. My grandma, my grandma Ophelia's house, because she cooked a lot. And as she got older, they became more middle class. Her and my aunt Dorothy. My aunt Dorothy is the one who took care of my grandma. Never married. They had a maid, an indigenous maid, which is part of the kind of the economic culture, I would say, in Guatemala. When people move up to the middle class, professional class, like my dad's family did, they were lawyers. Architects, accountants. My Aunt Erica is a principal. My Aunt Dorothy was an accountant for a bottling company, I was telling you. So they moved up the classes. Whereas my mom's side of the family, they were rural landowners. They were by no means poor, but they came from a more like country education, whereas my father's family, they came more from a university education. So in any case, my mom starts to learn a lot from grandma and from Rosa, the live-in maid who did a lot of the cooking after grandma got older. So then Rosa and grandma used to make a lot of traditional dishes. The beef tongue in a green sauce. That was really, really good. It's like a stew. It's like a mole, like a lot of moles is what she made. The cow head that I had told you about. I remember seeing the cow head just being purchased, and then I think it was a lot of the tissue, like the skin tissue, the ears that would get made into this adobo. I think it's what it's called, adobo. Really brown, thick stew, or not even stew. What is it called? Like a recado? What is it called? Like a mole.
Okay.
What would you call that? What is that called? Like the mole consistency.
Of
it's sauce.
like a thick sauce.
Yeah, a thick sauce.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with the really dark meat of the pig's head.
Pig or cow? Really, or both?
Pig.
Oh, pig. Okay.
This is a pig's cow.
Oh.
Pig's head. Yes.
Okay.
Pig's head. Oh, and she used to also make my grandma Ofelia. My grandma who made the tortillas in the rural family, that's grandma Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, abuelita. So they're both abuelitas. So that's grandma Virginia, who died in her 90s here in Long Beach, who went to your wedding.
That's right.
Yes. And my grandma Ofelia, she passed way early. She passed in her 70s from cancer. But, going in different directions. But yes, coming back to those recipes at grandma's and thinking about the pig here, eating like pig's head or anything it's not as common, right?
Yeah.
Pig's brains are really not common here, right? Some Mexican taco places, they do the pig's cheek and all that stuff, pig head too. But what I'm trying to get at is this other dish, pig's brains.
Okay.
In a red sauce, and that looked like not red like a blood red, but more like a fluorescent kind of red.
Oh wow!
I think the consistency of the brain and it wasn't the brains weren't like so cooked; they were slimy.
Oh wow!
They're slimy in a red sauce, and I was a little kid, and I had to eat all that.
Yeah, and did you enjoy it?
The pig's head was not as easy to enjoy.
Okay.
But everything else I did.
Okay.
Yes. But yeah, that was those, and then they would also make little tamales, but these are little side tamales.
Okay.
They're only they're like instead of a tortilla, so they're just a little tamal of corn dough inside of the banana leaf, and they're small.
Okay.
And they don't have a lot of condiment, or they do, but the masa is still condiment, with flavorings and such. But there's no meat. Okay. There's no vegetables in it. It's just it's like a tortilla, but in a tamal.
Steamed in the banana leaf.
Yes.
Instead of cooked on the comal.
Yes, and it's not a tortilla.
Right.
I'm just saying it takes the place of the tortilla.
Right.
Yes, because then you just kind of dip it in the black beans, the pureed black beans too. It's another thing that we eat a lot.
I want to get to those pureed black beans.
Yes.
So the side tamal, it's the same ingredient as a tortilla, but cooked differently. So therefore, it has a different texture. Is that fair to say?
The only comparison to the tortilla is that you eat it on the side of your mole or your dish, just like you would with the tortilla.
Okay.
But it's a tamal.
Fair enough.
But they're really small. They're probably smaller than a modern cell phone. So they're small.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're really the consistency is like kind of like snaps a little bit in your mouth.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to explain. But yeah, so those are little tamales. In the green leaf, and they come out green too because of the green leaves.
Yeah.
So so that was another connection. You eat the pig's meat with the little tamal on the side. And rice. Yeah.
So always serve with rice.
A lot of these dishes, yes.
Yes. Rice is just such a wonderful staple all around. So much of the world, not like in Europe and Northern European, but So before we return to the black beans, I want to ask you about the tamales that I've eaten by the hand of your sister, because they're so different than what we're used to here in California, the tamales that we have here in California are made with masa, which is the ground cornmeal.
Yes.
But your family makes them with potato.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So that's a recipe that my mom brought into the house from her in-laws again.
Oh.
So a lot of the foods that my mom, which she wasn't necessarily a dedicated cook. She just cooked to eat. To feed the family, to feed my stepdad, who's never gonna touch anything in the kitchen and make himself a sandwich. Mom would always have to come home from work, cleaning people's houses. He came home from work and building furniture, industrial furniture. So they're both tired, but then she had that second shift. Mm-hmm. So in any case, she was known for her dishes like the black beans, pureed black beans, and the paches. So the paches are the tamales that she learned from. They're part of the tradition in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. They're one of many tamales in Guatemala. Right. So they are made with masa and potatoes, boiled potatoes, peeled, mixed, and with a red sauce, which turns orange once the tamales are steamed in the banana leaf. Mm-hmm. So these are probably my favorite tamales of all. You put a little piece of chicken or a little piece of pork, boiled, nothing too flavored. A little strip of chile for decoration and flavor, but they come out orange. Mm-hmm. Yes, so they're potato and masa mixed together, and they pour the sauce that's made for it, and that's mixed. So then the masa has the sauce in it, whereas the other tamales, you would just pour the sauce just like a stripe. Okay. The salsa is mixed with the dough. Mm-hmm. Yes, mixed all together. Masa, yes, masa and potatoes, yes, and steamed in the banana leaf.
Yeah, and those are your favorite. When was the last time you had one of those?
I think my sister made some recently. Oh, good. Yeah, my sister Erica. Okay. Yeah, she's taken that on, that tradition. But yeah, so the tamales are made for holidays, for special occasions, as most families make the tamales for that. But one interesting part about the rice you brought up and tamales, when Hugo was born, my son, our firstborn, my Aunt Erica, she came to the United States to come see us. Her and Grandma, right. Grandma Virginia, my mom, my aunts, a couple of cousins, and not my sisters because they weren't. My sister was in Mexico. In any case, Hugo's born firstborn boy, especially the boy. So they all drive up to Oakland. They make the rice tamales because that's the tradition for my aunt's part of the family. My dad's part of the family. You make the rice tamales when there's a boy born. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, so the rice tamales are for the boy.
For the boy birth, yes. For the boy birth.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's an interesting recipe that doesn't have any masa in it. Yeah. It's made from rice.
Oh, wow.
Yes, from white rice.
Now, and we're going to talk about oogie in just a second, but do you know if the tamal is made from like cooked rice? I'm wondering if like the rice is ground and then cooked, so it's more like a sticky porridge. Like, do you have any idea?
Yeah, I have recollections of the process. Okay, kind of vague. Yeah, but I think you're right. I think it's soaked. The white rice is soaked. Short grain, I think, is like very standard rice. It's soaked and then it's ground, I think. Okay. And then somehow made into the tamal. Yeah, a tamal. Yeah. So those come out really white. Like really bright white. Because most masa, corn masa, it takes on the color of the banana leaf. But this one takes on more of its own color. And then those are a little bit sweeter. So that's a sweeter tamal.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and that comes with another mole type of sauce. I just keep calling all these sauces mole, but they're recados. Okay. And that one is made with really dark peppers. Yes, I think I would say
a dark green pepper.
No, dark like dried peppers.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like similar to how people make mole.
Yeah.
So
which is why you keep calling it mole.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the moles of Guatemala, and with dates.
Oh.
Yes, so dates. I think there may be some raisins in the recipe, some nuts too. So that's the rice tamale.
Okay, when the boy is born.
When the boy is born, yes.
And so I remember when Hugo was born, your whole family came up. You guys had a 1-bedroom. I think you were renting that little house, little casita.
That was
after.
Before, yes.
Okay.
Hugo was born in the small apartment off of MacArthur.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
I'm blanking out on the name of that area. We were on the cuts of a nicer neighborhood, so we had to really walk far to get into the nicer neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that was a cuddy apartment at the end of the day. Yes.
Yeah, Oakland, so that was all its neighborhoods.
Yeah, tiny 1-bedroom. Yes.
Yeah, the tiny 1-bedroom, and your whole family came up, and I remember I'm sorry, I'm getting choked up because I know how Hugo's birth changed me. And so just thinking about the way that your family responded, Pedro has a son, and so they all come up and they slept on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like, we will be here no matter what to celebrate this.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about this because I remember the first time I met Hugo. I was in the hospital room and I was holding him. And for the first time in my life, I felt unconditional love. Like, I will love him no matter what. He doesn't have to be smart. He doesn't have to be cool. He doesn't have to be successful. All that mattered to me in that moment is that he existed.
Oh, yeah.
And that's so profound because you think you know what love is. Right? Yeah. We love our parents, we love our partners, we love our friends and our families. But, Hugo made me a tia. He made me an auntie. Oh, yeah. And it expanded my heart in a way I didn't even know was possible. So.
Oh, that's so nice that you've made such a strong connection with Hugo.
Oh, he's my baby.
And I know, yeah. And I know I've heard the references to those memories with food with him too, right?
Oh, absolutely. When I was working on that roll recipe, y'all came up for, Thanksgiving, autumn harvest. I'm trying to rebrand it in my heart, in my mind. And we were hosting, and I know Hugo loves bread. Well, we all love bread. I mean, what else? But I just wanted him to be impressed. I was like, I made turkey, I made cornbread stuffing, I made all this other stuff. And I was like, I don't give a rip. If anything doesn't work, it's fine. But those rolls had to be on point. Yeah. And I was so stressed about it. He stayed the night at our house the day before. So he kind of helped me. He was young enough at that time. He must have been 10 or 11. Yeah, he was 10 or 11.
Yeah, because it's recent.
That's right, yeah, because he's 12 now. He'll be 13. And, he helped me a little bit. He wasn't super duper into it. But the next day when I took the rolls out of the oven, I'm like, Hugo, come. And, they're like a little too hot to eat, but you can't not eat it. And his eyes got so big after his first bite. And I just remember feeling like I made it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is all I ever wanted in life, was to have that look, because I made something with my hands, and this, small human loves it.
Oh, yeah.
What a compliment. Especially because kids are hella picky.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, look, we all love bread, but, it just...
And that recipe had significance for you, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, exactly. It's like, I'm not going to ever feed my child this, but Hugo loves it. And Hugo knows that his tia can make these rolls for him.
Oh, yes.
And that's it. It's like, okay. Oh, I love love my baby so much.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to say this out loud because it's funny because it's like he's 12 now. And so he's at that age where it's like, yeah, you know, Tia and Tio aren't that cool right now unless they're playing, you know, video games or basketball or something. And that's fine because it's beautiful to watch him grow up.
Oh, yeah.
It's a highlight of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're black bean babies.
That's right.
Yes.
So let's talk about those pureed black beans because that's another thing I had never had. You know, normally you have just either cooked black beans or quote unquote refried.
Uh-huh.
But your family completely purees it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's the runny type. There's also the volteados, which are a little bit more like fried, like refried beans, but they're made into what we call maleta. And maleta is a luggage. Is
like a suitcase?
Yeah.
Oh.
Picture your suitcase, right? Even like your small maletin, your small little duffel bag. It's kind of compacted, right? So then the black beans that are very traditional in Guatemala, and there's a brand that has carried them for years too called Ducal, which, you know, we also eat those like canned Ducal beans, which are really good too. So those are pureed and then tossed in a pan with oil until they compact into a maleta. So those are also very delicious, and those are eaten with fresh cheese, like the crumbly cheese, and sour cream.
Okay.
And the plantains.
Oh yes.
Yes, and then there's also the stuffed plantains, the sweet dessert. It's mashed up plantains, and you make that into like a little tortilla, little dough, and then stuff it with the black beans inside, and then you make the ball, and then you refry those. Sprinkle sugar on top, and that's another black bean related kind of little snack. Those are called I just blanked out on the name, but they're a dessert, and that's the black beans.
So versatile, the black bean.
Yeah.
So your babies are black bean babies,
and let me tell you why.
Yes,
because then Shannon,
your wife,
she took on that recipe from my mom.
That's right.
So for me, the frying of the onions, coming home and smelling that, growing up at my mom's, and then now that Shannon, she really used to make black beans in the pressure cooker.
Yeah, you'd eat them every day.
Yeah, just like my mom. So my wife took on the recipe from her in-laws.
Just like your mother did.
Just like my mom did, yes. And then my wife, Shannon, she found sisterhood with my sister. Yeah. Just like my mom did with her sister-in-laws. Yeah. Like my tia Erika, her and my tia Erika were very close. My tia Erika still cries when she remembers her because she misses her so much. Yeah. And they were like sisters, but they were in-law sisters. So the kids, some of their first meals are solid food is avocado and black beans. So many pictures of Nayeli, now Nayeli with all the black beans all over her face. Yeah, just doing that, and so the smell of the onions, to get the beans ready and to refry them. That's when you get into the refry. Yeah, it's the onions.
Yeah, and that's the smell that gets you.
Yeah, and they go till they're burnt. Okay. Till they're like crispy, like black, and then that's when you incorporate the beans and.
So that's a very flavorful onion.
Oh yeah. Then the onions just kind of disappear. So it's a white onion. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the runny beans.
And so I want to talk about your children's names because both of them were named from the heart, truly. So Hugo was named after your father. Yes. One of the questions that I have about that, I was thinking about your father's family, architects and principals and all of this, but he was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
How did that fit into the family dynamic? Like, did they support him, or were they kind of like, no, go get a regular job?
I think he was the youngest.
Okay.
Of a family of estimating maybe like 7 or 8. So I think he was maybe more privileged that he didn't have to grow up in the older days when a lot of them were still trying to get their degree. Some of the women, my tia Erika being one of the eldest, she had to work really hard for the boys to get their degrees and for them to establish themselves once they moved from the small city to the big capital city. So she tells me about it. They would carry they would sell textiles at the market, and they would just get up really early in the morning and take it out and sell it while the boys were going through law school and all of that.
Wow.
Business school and all that. So I think it was more of, they knew that my dad was on that path because he was always that revolutionary minded person. And they just accepted it, but they were very concerned.
Yeah.
Because people were dying, people were getting killed. But he made a contribution, I think, and he was very well known in the leadership of the party there. And he got to travel a lot. He went to Russia, he went to Germany. My mom got to go to Germany as well. Eastern Germany, the socialist bloc. They went to Cuba. They would take us to Mexico City. We had some family in Mexico City too who had fled the war in Guatemala. They were tailors, 2 men, my grandma's brothers, my grandma Ofelia's brothers. So yes, that brings me to those experiences too that are very vague in my memory. But I remember visiting their shops as tailors. And later on, my mom shared that my dad was a little bit selfish because we were just a cover for him to smuggle guns across from Mexico to Guatemala. So they saw him as a family man with 2 children, a wife, and what they were hiding in the trunk was propaganda and revolutionary propaganda, which that's the name of it. Is in English it has a bad connotation, but propaganda, things to share, to spread the word, and guns. Yes. So bit of a tangent, but yes, that was our experience going back and forth to Mexico, which is how I feel that I've always had a connection to Mexico City, and I got to go study abroad there for a year. So going back to the naming of my son, when I got to college, I became very revolutionary minded. It was right after the 9/11. Then that war broke out by the United States with the pretext of 9/11.
Yeah.
George W. Bush is in office, and all the rhetoric that came with that. So I became very involved, organized with Palestinian and Middle Eastern folks and Asian folks. So I became very, very radical at that time as a young person, very involved in that, going to Chiapas, going to visit the Zapatistas. So for me, my dad became a role model and in kind of this legend, this hero that I don't even remember because I was 4 years old when he was taken away.
Wow.
So of course, my first son, I'm going to name him Hugo. Yeah. But coincidence and not so much, my stepdad is also Hugo.
That's right.
His name is Victor Hugo. But my sister Erica and I, we only refer to him as Victor because everybody else calls him Hugo. But for me, it's like there's only one. There's only one Hugo. There's only one Hugo. Not for my mom.
That's right.
My mom, it was like 2 Hugos, and then there was a
now
third.
She got 3 Hugos.
And she got 3.
That's right.
Yes. So that was a little bit bittersweet. I think my stepdad, even at my graduation from UC Davis, it was the Chicano graduation, so we each got to say a speech in front with our family members, and I just kept going off about my dad. Rest in power, and like, this is for you, Dad. And then while my stepdad is sitting in the audience, and my mom told me, like, yeah, he felt a little this because he's been here all these years and you didn't shout him out. But in any case, so that's Hugo. Hugo is after my dad, and to some extent after my stepdad, because he was there.
Yeah.
And then Yashche. So Yashche is the indigenous, making the connection to his indigenous roots, and that means the ceiba tree. And the ceiba tree is the kapok, or the now in that movie, is that character in that movie too, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's a kapok. Kapok is more like in the Caribbean. That's the name of the ceiba tree, and the ceiba tree is highly regarded by the Mayan people. It's a very tall tree. It reaches, into the sky. Has a very big crest. Right, crest is the top, right? And they make the connection of the tree, how the tree connects the spirit world, the underground, the human world is the trunk, and then the crest is the universe. So it just connects all those dimensions for the people. So then the kapok, the ceiba tree, it's also called Yashche. So Yashche is the Mayan name that he has as a middle name.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
And your daughter, you gave her the name Nayeli.
Oh, yes.
Nayeli Gloria.
Yeah. That was just sent from somewhere into my head. And, as a classroom teacher, I've worked in the Latino community for, a lot of the public schools are mostly Latino, African American, minority, but majority Latino students. So in all those years, 17 years of teaching, I've never had a Nayeli in my class. That's the connection I'm trying to make. Like, I don't know where that name, like, I had heard it, but I don't think it was, I don't even really recall where the name Nayeli popped into my head.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a known name. It's not so unknown like Yashche. So Nayeli comes into my head, and I share it with Shannon as she's pregnant, and she says, yes, that's the name.
That's the name.
And it means I love you in Zapotec.
That's right.
Yes, in Nahuatlized Zapotec language. Because the Nahuatls are the Nahuatl is the language of the Aztecs or the Mexica.
Okay.
And they were the dominant group in that central Mexico area. They conquered a lot of neighboring lands. So they became kind of like the lingua franca was the Nahuatl. Nayeli comes from a Zapotec name, but Nayeli, as it sounds and as it's spelled, it's more Nahuatlized, or more like, made into more like a mainstream language.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the poignancy of her name, it's so beautiful because every time we say her name, we're saying, I love you.
Oh, yes.
And I see this, I don't know if you do, but I see it as a two-way street, right? Like, we love her and then she loves back.
Oh, yes.
Right? And so, for the listeners, the reason why this is so important is because Nayeli died when she was 7, right?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah, she transitioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, she battled cancer for 4 years. She was diagnosed right before turning 4. So she was 3 in about 10 months.
Yeah.
And then she died at 7 in about 10 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was fierce. I mean, she was one of my main teachers in life. She was really hardcore, and she had this loud voice, as you remember. She was a very strong-headed kind of kid, very strong surface, but also very tender emotionally inside when she cracked.
Sensitive,
yeah, very sensitive. But yeah, she was something else.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we would visit and she'd be in the hospital, and then she'd, sit with her legs crossed, and she'd be like, I'm meditating. And she's like 5.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, she had that old soul kind of.
Absolutely.
Kind of things that she would say, and
yeah,
her memory was on point. She learned how to read on her own. She just decoded the language and started reading, and she would go through books. So Nayeli is one of our our guiding lights.
Absolutely.
And she was a black bean baby.
Yeah.
She loved her black bean burritos.
Yeah, she did.
She loved her Lola's black bean burritos.
And Shout out to Lola's in Long Beach.
Yep. And then in Hollywood, we used to get her the Homestay burritos. Mm-hmm. It's a little spot that's famous out there. People probably know about it from that area. So she was it. So I see this picture in my head of her face covered with black beans as a little baby.
Yeah. That's also one of Sean's favorite pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Just smeared all over her face.
Oh,
and she could not have been happier.
That's right.
Yeah. And you used the word transitioned. And so I want to talk about that because she's very much still with you all. Yeah. She's she's here, but she's transitioned to a different form.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. That's why if people ask me, oh, you have kids? Yes, I have 2. Yeah. And then I don't mind sharing. I get into the conversation, and I do it just to continue her presence. Yeah. Not so much to just share my pain and my, my loss, but also it's a gain too because we got to know her for that long, and it's just unfortunate that we weren't able to see her in this world for longer than those 7 years.
That's right.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Nayeli. Mija.
Rest in peace.
I love you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm crying, but I'm going to share. We talked about this yesterday. One of my favorite memories of her. I mean, again, she just had such a strong personality. Mm-hmm. She always made an impression. But our last Christmas all together. So must have been 2018. No, it was before COVID. So
probably like 2019 then?
Yeah, that must have been 2019. Yeah. So we didn't know what was happening yet. And, so the extended family came down, so Frank and Marna, Nick and Stephanie, me and Sean. Yeah. So we were all here together, which is rare. Mm-hmm. It's not often that we're all together. And we were doing karaoke. And someone put on Baby Got Back.
Oh, yeah.
by Sir Mix-a-Lot. And Nayeli was singing Baby Got Back in the style of metal. It was great.
Oh, yeah. She did have a metal kind of voice.
Yeah. She was screaming into the microphone, I love butts.
Yeah. Big butts.
Big butts, that's right. Let's be specific. I like big butts.
Uh-huh. And I cannot lie.
And I cannot lie.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and that was another joke that carried on with Sean, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband, Shannon's brother.
Sean the jokester. And
yes.
She upped one on him.
Is that the expression?
She did. Yeah. She crushed him with jokes.
Crushed him with jokes, that's right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we got to give a shout out. Nayeli's middle name, Gloria. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Sean and Shannon's mother. Yeah, please.
Yeah, well, just them both carrying those grandparents and and especially Gloria, another one that we lost, and unfortunately for me, I didn't get to meet her. I don't know if you did.
No, I didn't. Yeah. She died when Sean was still in high school.
Yeah, so we didn't get to see that light, which we hear so much about. So Gloria, and that was because Ben, Shannon's dad. Mm-hmm. Grandpa Ben, he was really pushing for Gloria as Nayeli's name. Mm-hmm. And Shannon was not having it. I was down for it, especially after naming my son, our son Hugo after my dad. So it's nice that they carry a parental, a family name. Mm-hmm. I carry Pedro, Pedrito. That's my grandma Ophelia's dad, who I still got to meet, a marimba player. I have his vinyl. Wow. And my dad took on the war name, Nom de Guerre, right? Like something like that. His war name was Pedrito. Yeah, so that was his pseudonym for the movement. And they named me Pedro, and they called me Pedrito growing up. And now I work at a school where we go by first names. All the staff go by first names.
Oh, really?
And some of the kids started calling me Pedrito. And I felt very endeared by it. So I love it when people call me Pedrito, because that's a family name. Because that's what my dad went by, Pedrito. He was a little guy too, a shorty like me. My dad's family we're known for being very short. So Pedritos kind of fits us, and my tío Rudy's also Pedro. But the main Pedritos are myself, my dad, and great grandpa. Yeah. So then it's nice that the kids also get to carry that on. Nayeli, Gloria, and Hugo. Yes,
yeah. Yeah, that was one of the weird things about, you and I, and then our spouses as siblings, because there weren't a lot of living parents.
That is true.
And now there's none. You've been married for how long?
About 13 years.
13 years, yeah. And we've been married for 11. And so, when we started out, we had Grandpa Ben and your mom, Selena. And now, it's the four of us and Uki.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, Frank and Marna and everyone else. Oh, yeah. But yeah.
And that's what's nice with Marna and Frank. Yeah. That I feel that they represent some of that. The missing grandparents. Yeah. That's why Marna's such a sweetheart. And, Frank is sweet in his own way. Yeah. No, he's great. Because he's going to hear this. No, but it's nice to have Marna as, somebody that Shannon can talk to and we can go visit, and she's there for Hugo, and yeah, it's been great. And also it's been great to be welcomed into y'all's family.
Oh, same.
Yeah, for all of us.
Look, I remember when Sean and I got married, and I wanted your family there. I mean, as someone who doesn't have, I have a huge family, but my nuclear family was very small. I'm an only child as far as I know. And, the people who raised me, so my parents, my grandmother, and my Aunt Ophelia had already died. If there was any chance in hell, I could have brought, my parents to your wedding. And in fact, I did bring my sister, shout out to Sister Danielle. I wanted your family there at our wedding. It was so important to me to just have that, like, we are now family.
Yeah, that was really nice.
So. Yeah, we do all right together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Grandma Virginia, she loved to travel. She loved to be included. So it was so nice for her to be there. Yeah.
I danced with her at your wedding, and that's a highlight for me. And also when you talk about your mother and your grandmother and your stepfather, it's nice that I know who you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, that's the connection we all have. And
yeah. That's right. Right. Yeah, for some reason I want to come back to the house on the farm. I don't know why, but I'm just wondering, do you ever long for that, like the feeling that you had when you were living with your grandparents for those couple years? Do you ever long to go back to that house? Like, of course it's different now. Oh, yeah. But what's that feeling like to the land?
Yeah, it's romanticized probably in a lot of ways. But it's full of great memories. Do I long to go back and live in Casillas? I don't know. I think I might have given it a shot because my mom had a house there on the plot, and now all the sons and daughters, they have built their own house on that plot where the big house was, where we all grew up. So now there's just full of modern small houses, like condos. They've all built. So my mom left me that house when she passed, and I recently sold it to my cousin, who was also living there when I was living there. So would I want to live there? Maybe not. But I think I might have given it a shot if I wouldn't have gotten married and started a family. Especially because I was in that radical space where going back to, my roots and my country and, after U.S. imperialist. Which I see it differently now. I'm very comfortable under the wing of U.S. capitalism. It's comfy to have a job that pays you and That's medical benefits, which I wouldn't have had the same opportunities over there. Yeah. But which is interesting. I don't know if ironic is the irony, but my dad was very anti-U.S. imperialism because of his life, and we are here. Yeah. And he would have never brought us here. So through death is how we end up in some of these situations, and And if my mom wouldn't have moved here, if I would have moved here with my mom at the age of 6 or 5, instead of going to Casillas, I would be a totally different person.
Absolutely.
So while living with grandma represents the loss of my mom too, because we had just lost my dad, and then my mom moves away.
Yeah.
And she leaves us there. So now I'm a little kid with no parents.
Yep.
And she would take forever to come and visit because of, money and legality issues. So she would come every now and then, and I would be like, "Who are you?" Like she would remind me of those moments when I would say, "No, I don't know you anymore."
Wow.
So that's what some of that represents. But I was still nourished. I was a little kid. I was the youngest one in the house. So grandma was very loving, very strong, and grandpa too. I remember grandpa passing out drunk. He was a big drunkie, but he was a peaceful one. And I remember just, laying next to him on the ground and just kind of consoling him. Yeah. So, and I remember the cows at night. I remember the ghost stories that my grandma used to tell me about the Siwanaba and the Llorona and the Duende. So that was pretty scary too. I couldn't, sleep was tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Under those circumstances.
They weren't the friendly ghosts.
Yeah. And then the cows and making all the noises at night. So I have those fond memories. Mm-hmm. Yes. Riding a horse and seeing fresh milk.
Yeah.
My grandma used to make cheese, sour cream.
Wow. All
of that. Oh, and she had a big, talking about the oven. She had a big wood burning oven where she would make cornbread. Oh, yeah. That was really good because cornbread is a big staple in Guatemala too. So I remember that from grandma too.
Yeah.
And I remember her, was cooking with the logs. And one day that grandpa got a little out of hand because he was kind of tipsy. She said, "You know what?" She picked up the log on the forehead. So that's another fond memory of grandma. She said, "Hell no, you can talk to me like that."
That's right.
Yeah, and that was the only time I saw them do that.
Wow.
But yeah, he was definitely under her.
Mm-hmm.
Under her check. She was the boss.
Yeah.
And that was the little grandma that walked all the way from Dooley's, Long Beach, all the way to church every day.
Wow. This connection to Guatemala and then also this distance, right?
Yes.
You're not, and I've said this about myself 1,000 times. I don't know if I'm the person that my parents wanted me to be.
Yeah.
Because they were sick and then they died, I've had a lot of space to become my own person. I'm not religious like they wanted me to be. I'm not quiet and well-mannered like my grandmother wanted me to be. I just I'm like, I'm me, whatever, and I like me. In the past, I've wondered, like, would they like me? I know that they would love me, but would they like who I became? And so for me, it's a very, like, loving and also griefful sentiment, right? That, like, my parents didn't have as strong a hand in who I became as most kids who live with their parents until they're 18.
Oh, yeah.
I also moved around a lot, just like you. So at first, I guess I want to ask, is that like a loving, griefful thing for you as well? Like, do you ever think about that sort of thing?
The fact of my parents and
yeah, well, like how I love what you said, that like I'm comfortable under capitalism. Like
it's
given me a good life compared to that of my parents, my grandparents. And so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, especially having those memories and understanding of who my father was. Would he be proud of me of saying those kind of statements, right?
Right.
Of me, would he be proud of me of having established myself here, married an American cultured person in Shannon? I think he would, because at the end of the day, I'm still carrying on the legacy through my work as a teacher, through my personality with other people, with Hugo. I think, and sometimes I don't think in those terms.
Okay.
Because I'm comfortable being me and just living, just in this time and space, and not really feeling like I owe anybody anything or that, I'm trying to make somebody proud or what ifs. So yeah, just trying to maybe make myself proud and figure out how to improve myself and the little things that I need to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. You've given me a lot of food for thought, Pedro.
All right. Nice.
And so my, the final question that I ask every guest, and actually, before we even get to that, are there any other things that are on your heart or on your tongue that you would like to share?
I think just the fact that, I don't know, the food is such a strong binding agent to memory, to for lack of better words. So for me, going back to mostly my childhood in Guatemala and just attaching all these memories to food, and acknowledging too that American cultural imperialism hit Guatemala and how that influenced us as well, with the highly processed foods, and how that started to rear its head when I was there. Yeah. And now it's even more. But how that also influenced our culture, because food is so global, even back then in the 80s. So foods that I was introduced to over there that are still eaten here, I can still make those connections with people who grew up here because of the same processed foods that we had over there with the brands from the United States. Like the little Kellogg's cereal boxes. Yeah. In the little aluminum bag that they came in. I have those memories. Corn Puffs. I have those memories in Guatemala in the 80s, whereas y'all had those memories in California in the same time. So just I wanted to make that connection to that. In Guatemala, we have a lot of the tradition, but then we were also hit very hard by your U.S. culture imperialism. And not to label things such harsh terms, but that's what it is. It is what it is. Yeah, and then we watched the Pepsi commercials with Michael Jackson's full video of Thriller, and that's the connection, Pepsi, and then watching Thriller on national Guatemalan TV. Yeah. So that's another interesting part of the memories I have of Guatemala. But then moving here too, it's just moving to Long Beach was also very, very eye-opening, because then I was exposed to international, like Filipino, Cambodian, Laos, Laotian, Samoan, African American, Mexican, Salvadorian. So place and time, and food. It just makes those kind of like three-dimensional connections. Yeah.
Knowing that like grief and love are so intertwined, you don't have one without the other. They work in tandem. What is your life recipe for having the capacity to hold both? Like, how do you metabolize grief? How do you metabolize love? How do you take care of your emotional self, Pedro?
I don't know. I hope that I'm not just bottling it up all inside. Because I feel like there's times when I can cry and really let out some of that emotion, especially after, most directly losing Nayeli. But I feel that, I don't know. I think maybe I'm not taking care of it. Maybe I'm just being too passive about it. And I just go on every day. But I think how did I accept the loss of Nayeli, if we're talking about grief? Because what else am I going to do about it, right? Yeah. I'm not going to live in a space where I'm just going to beat myself down over things outside of my control and just fate, and things happen. So how do I manage? By counting the blessings that I have. Living in a comfortable home at a comfortable price, having family like y'all and my sisters, and having work, fulfilling work, and being able to go outside and look at trees and smell fresh air. Yeah. So that's really, I love my dogs and my son, and and Shannon. So having the blessing of having a partner that's easy to get along with, for the most part, and loyal. So that's how I process the grief, through acknowledging the love that we have.
Yeah. Well, I just want to point out, I see this from the outside. Maybe it doesn't feel like this for you on the inside. But what about your art? Your home is filled with beautiful art. created by you and Nayeli.
Yeah. I think it's not such a core part of my identity.
Okay.
Especially because I don't practice much of anything other than sitting around and running around and yeah.
Running life's errands.
Yeah. Or running too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You are a runner.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah, so art is more just in the gaze, I guess, in the eye. And just like appreciating those outlets, being able to cut that tree and it looks decent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's just one piece of, but I don't practice it enough. I observe it and I appreciate it, but not enough practice.
Okay. Pedro, I just want to thank you again for taking this time to share about your childhood and your family and all of these wonderful things that have influenced, your presence in the world. I'm glad we're family. Thank you.
And I appreciate you acknowledging the worth or seeing the value in my story.
Thank you. Come on. Yes. You know.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you for listening to Recipes for Grief. You can find more information about today's guest on the podcast page of your player, as well as their recipe card that's available on my website, AndreaSextonDumas.com. That's AndreaSexton, D as in donut, UMAS.com. If you'd like to share your recipe for grief, leave a 3-minute voicemail at the following number, and your message may be played on a future episode as a listener shout out. That number is 510-426-6041. That's 510-426-6041. Find me on Instagram and TikTok at Recipes for Grief. And now, here's a little advice from my grandmother.
Life isn't easy. You just have to make the best of it.